What if I told you that one of the most feared and hated philosophers in history never actually said what people think he said? What if his ideas were twisted so badly that they inspired wars, dictators, and even the most extreme ideologies of the modern world? They called him dangerous. They said his philosophy was evil. Some even blamed him for the rise of the Nazis. But what if I told you Nietzsche was actually warning us about the future? That he saw something coming, something terrifying, that we are only now beginning to understand? Why does everyone hate Nietzsche? Is it because he was wrong, or because he was right? Let's find out. God is dead. A warning, not a celebration. Few quotes in history have been as misunderstood as God is dead. It sounds harsh. It sounds rebellious. Many people think Nietzsche was just another atheist celebrating the end of religion. But the truth is far more shocking. He wasn't celebrating at all. He was warning us. What did Nietzsche really mean? Nietzsche wasn't saying that God had physically died. He was pointing out something much deeper. He saw that people were slowly moving away from religion. Science was advancing, traditional beliefs were being questioned, and faith in God was fading. But here's where Nietzsche's warning gets terrifying. He didn't think this was a victory. He thought it was a disaster waiting to happen. Because if people stopped believing in God, what would they replace him with? For centuries, religion gave people meaning. It told them what was right and wrong. It gave them purpose, structure, and a reason to live. Nietzsche saw a future where this foundation would collapse, and people would be left lost, confused, and empty. And that's exactly what happened. Are we living in Nietzsche's prediction? Look around today. Depression, anxiety, loneliness. These things are at an all-time high. People are searching for meaning everywhere, in money, in fame, in social media, in distractions. But deep down, nothing seems to be enough. The more connected we are through technology, the more disconnected we feel inside. Nietzsche saw this coming. He knew that once people stopped believing in a higher purpose, they wouldn't automatically become stronger or happier. Many would fall into nihilism, the belief that nothing really matters. And when nothing matters, people either become hopeless or they look for something else to blindly follow. What happens after God? Here's where things get even darker. Nietzsche warned that without God, people wouldn't suddenly become free thinkers. They would become desperate for something new to believe in. For some, that meant following ideologies without question. Political movements, leaders, cults, consumerism, things that gave them a sense of purpose, even if that purpose was empty or dangerous. Others would escape into distractions, avoiding the big questions of life by drowning themselves in entertainment, work, or addictions. Sound familiar? The final question, was Nietzsche right? So was Nietzsche right to warn us? He didn't believe that everyone should just go back to blind faith. Instead, he challenged us to create our own values, to find meaning beyond just following what we're told. But that's not easy. It takes strength, it takes deep thinking, and it takes courage to face life without relying on easy answers. The real question isn't whether God is dead. It's whether we've found anything strong enough to take his place. What do you think? Are we living in the world Nietzsche feared? Let's talk in the comments. The Nazi myth. How Nietzsche's own sister betrayed him. One of the biggest lies ever told about Nietzsche is that he inspired the Nazis. Many people believe that his philosophy was used to justify Hitler's rise to power. But the truth is shocking. Nietzsche had nothing to do with the Nazis. In fact, if he had been alive during their time, he would have been one of their biggest critics. Nietzsche hated nationalism and racism. Friedrich Nietzsche was not a supporter of nationalism. He believed that blindly following a country or a leader was one of the worst things a person could do. He admired free-thinking individuals, people who questioned authority and created their own values instead of following the crowd. And racism, Nietzsche despised it. He believed that categorizing people based on their race was foolish and dangerous. He once called anti-Semitism, hatred toward Jewish people, a sickness, and strongly criticized those who promoted it. He was disgusted by those who judged others based on race instead of their individual strength and character. So how did his name become connected to a movement that stood for everything he was against? The sister who rewrote his legacy. The real reason Nietzsche's ideas were linked to the Nazis wasn't because of his own writings, it was because of his sister, Elisabeth Nietzsche. Unlike Nietzsche, Elisabeth was deeply involved in nationalist and anti-Semitic ideas. She married a well-known German nationalist who hated Jewish people and believed in a pure Germany. Nietzsche, who loved independent thinking, was disgusted by her beliefs. Their relationship became strained, and he even cut off contact with her. But then something terrible happened. Near the end of his life, Nietzsche suffered from a severe mental illness. He could no longer write or explain his ideas properly, and that's when Elisabeth stepped in. After Nietzsche's death, Elisabeth took control of all his unpublished works, but instead of preserving his true philosophy, she edited his writings, changing them to fit her own views. She removed passages where Nietzsche criticized nationalism and racism. She twisted his words to make it seem like he supported strong, authoritarian leaders, when in reality he believed in a personal freedom above all else. Hitler and the Nietzsche archives. Elisabeth didn't stop there. She wanted Nietzsche's name to be remembered, but in a way that matched her own beliefs, and so she reached out to one of the most dangerous men in history, Adolf Hitler. She invited Hitler to the Nietzsche archives, where all of his works were kept. She gave him books with edited versions of Nietzsche's philosophy, making it seem as if he had supported ideas like German superiority and the rise of a strong dictator. Hitler, always looking for intellectual justification for his actions, took these writings and used them to promote his own ideology. This is how the world was fooled. This is why, for decades, people believed that Nietzsche's ideas led to Nazism, when in reality, he would have despised everything the Nazis stood for. Imagine being betrayed by history. Think about it. Nietzsche spent his entire life writing about the dangers of blind obedience, warning against the kind of thinking that leads people to follow tyrants. He rejected nationalism, racism, and hatred, and yet, after his death, his own sister twisted his words so badly that he became associated with one of history's darkest regimes. Imagine being one of the greatest thinkers of all time, only for history to rewrite your words into something you stood against. This is the real tragedy of Nietzsche. Not that he was controversial, not that he was misunderstood, but that his legacy was stolen and turned into a weapon he never intended to create. Now that you know the truth, what do you think? Was Nietzsche a villain, or was he simply a thinker whose words were hijacked by history? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to uncover more hidden truths about history's most misunderstood figures, don't forget to like and subscribe, because trust me, there's so much more they haven't told you. The Übermensch, a threat to the system. Nietzsche had a vision. He believed that most people live their lives like sheep, following the rules, believing what they're told, never questioning anything. Society hands them a script, and they just follow it without thinking. Go to school, get a job, obey authority, retire, and die. But Nietzsche wasn't interested in sheep. He was interested in the rare individuals who break free from the herd, the ones who refuse to be controlled, who think for themselves and who carve their own path. He called these people the Übermensch, or the Superman. Now this is where most people get it wrong. When they hear Superman, they imagine a dictator, a tyrant, someone who rules over others with an iron fist. But that's not what Nietzsche meant at all. The Übermensch isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. Think about it. Most people live by the morals, beliefs, and traditions that were handed to them. They never stop to ask, do I really believe in this? Or was I just taught to believe in it? The Übermensch doesn't just accept what society tells him. He creates his own values. He doesn't wait for permission. He doesn't follow trends. He decides for himself what is meaningful and what is not. He takes full responsibility for his life instead of blaming others. Sounds like self-improvement, right? Becoming the best version of yourself. Pushing past your limits and refusing to be just another follower. Well, here's where it gets interesting. Society hates people like this. Why? Because independent thinkers can't be controlled. They don't blindly obey authority. They don't just believe what the news tells them. They don't fall for marketing tricks that convince them they need the latest product to be happy. They are unpredictable, unshakable, and unwilling to be just another piece in the machine. And that's a huge problem for those in power. Governments, corporations, religious institutions, they all rely on people following the system. If too many people start thinking for themselves, questioning authority, and living by their own rules, the whole system starts to shake. This is why Nietzsche's ideas scared people. He wasn't telling everyone to rebel or destroy society. He was telling people to wake up, to stop living on autopilot, to stop being slaves to outdated ideas, traditions, and expectations. But here's the thing. Most people don't want to wake up. It's easier to just follow the crowd. It's safer to believe what you're told. Thinking for yourself is hard. It requires courage. It requires taking responsibility for your own happiness instead of blaming society, religion, or politicians for your problems. And that's why the Übermensch remains rare. Most people fear true freedom because it means they can no longer make excuses. So, the real question is, are you ready to wake up? Or will you stay in the comfort of the herd? Why Nietzsche was truly hated. Nietzsche wasn't hated because he was wrong. He was hated because he was right. He exposed the weaknesses in human nature, and that made people uncomfortable. He challenged the idea that we should blindly follow traditions, religions, and moral values without questioning them. Instead, he encouraged people to think for themselves, to create their own path, and to take responsibility for their own lives. But not everyone was ready for that level of freedom. Most people prefer the comfort of certainty. They want simple answers, clear rules, and a sense of security in their beliefs. Nietzsche took that away. He told people that meaning is not something given to us, it's something we must create. And for many that was terrifying. But history shows us a pattern. Whenever someone challenges the system, they are either silenced, ignored, or turned into a villain. It happened to Galileo when he said the earth revolves around the sun. It happened to Socrates when he questioned the values of Athens. And it happened to Nietzsche when he warned the world about the dangers of losing purpose without replacing it with something strong. He saw too much, too soon. He predicted the struggles of the modern world, the confusion, the emptiness, the lack of direction. He saw that without strong values, people would become lost, easily controlled, and desperate for something to believe in. And because of that, the world never forgave him. Was he a madman or a prophet? Now that you know the truth, You have to ask yourself, was Nietzsche really a madman, or was he one of the few who truly understood where the world was headed? Was he dangerous, or was he simply trying to wake people up before it was too late? His ideas were powerful, but power always comes with a price. He spent the last years of his life alone, suffering from illness, and completely misunderstood by the world. But today, more than a century later, his words still shake people to their core. So what do you think? Was Nietzsche ahead of his time? Or was he a man who pushed too far into the unknown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you love uncovering hidden truths about history's most misunderstood thinkers, hit that like button and subscribe. Because trust me, there's so much more they haven't told you.